Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, we're going to be doing a kind of a special get ready with me. We actually are getting ready to take our family picture this afternoon. So I thought it would be fun to sit down and share with you guys my makeup that I'm doing, which by the way, it's done. I'm wearing it right now. And I thought along the way it'd be fun to share with you guys just some tips that I have for people if they are doing their makeup for a special event that's going to be photographed or on video. There definitely are some things to keep in mind when you are doing your makeup for a special event or situation like that. So let's just jump right into it. Quick heads up, today's video is going to be in voiceover format because I have my little helper right here. My little girl's here with me today, so I knew that she was going to be making an awful lot of noise, so I am lucky that I'm getting 45 seconds to do an intro, and she's turning my lights off. Charlie, turn it back on! So I hope that you guys enjoy this video. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so I'm going to kick things off with my primer. Today I'm using the Smashbox Photo Finish Primerizer. This is a great primer for my very, very dry skin. It just sits really well underneath my foundation. It's relatively new to me, but I really have been loving how this feels on my skin and preps it for foundation. For my foundation today, I'm going to use one of my favorites for pictures, and it's the Makeup Forever Ultra HD foundation. I love this because it's really good coverage, but it's a really lightweight foundation, and it also is a perfect shade match for me, which I think especially with pictures, you really want to make sure that there's no color differentiation between like your neck or your arms or shoulders if they're showing and your face. You really want to make sure everything matches perfectly and there's no color differences because those will show up on camera. Then I'm just going to go in with my eyeshadow primer. Today I'm using the Wet n Wild eyeshadow primer. Then I'm going to be taking my concealer. So for pictures, I always like to use a concealer that's quite a bit brighter than what I typically use. I just want a lot of brightness underneath my eye. And today I'm using the IT Cosmetics Bye Bye Under Eye Concealer in the shade Light. You can definitely tell that this is quite a bit lighter than the rest of my skin tone, but I really like this for pictures because it really gives kind of a highlighted effect and just brightens up that area, which tends to be relatively dark on me to begin with. So I think for pictures, again, I usually like to go just a little bit lighter than what I typically do. And don't be afraid if it looks a little bit off at first, but once everything's kind of on and blended together, it will just look seamless. I'm going to set that with my setting powder. Today I'm using the Rimmel Stay Matte powder. Now, I don't usually set my face very much with powder because I have such dry skin, but with pictures I do like to use a little bit more setting powder than I typically use. I just want to make sure that everything lasts really well, nothing moves around, and it just kind of stays in place and doesn't crease on me between the time I'm doing my makeup and the time that I actually will have my picture taken. And then I'm going to move on to my bronzer. Today I'm taking my Too Faced Chocolate Soleil bronzer. This is one of my favorites. I consider this one a little bit more of like a contour because it's a little bit more of a cool tone, but I absolutely love this bronzer. Now when it comes to pictures and really cheek color in general, but especially bronzer and blush, you really want to go kind of more heavy-handed. Now in person, this does seem a little bit intimidating. I mean, if you were to see this makeup in person, as you will probably see even just watching this on camera, it is a little bit heavy. It's definitely going to look a lot more bright and intense than what I typically do on a daily basis. But again, if you want your makeup to show up in your pictures, you really want to make sure that you put a little bit extra on, especially when it comes to your cheek color, your lip color, and your eye color. I find that I really like to add a little bit more than I usually would. So typically I tell people if you feel a little bit like you look a little bit clownish, that's probably just right, because again, I have found that when you're getting your picture taken, regardless of what type of lighting you're in, whether it's studio lights or natural lights, really bright, intense, good lighting tends to wash out makeup. I'm also going to be taking this bronzer. This is the Essence Sun Club bronzer. This one's just a little bit warmer than the Too Faced one. I'm just adding this kind of on top, like slightly above where I added the Too Faced bronzer, just to give my skin a little bit of warmth. Then I'm going to go in with my highlight. Today I'm taking the Maybelline Master Chrome highlighter. This one's in the color Molten Rose Gold. This is a really great highlighter. It's definitely relatively intense, at least for what I typically reach for, but I recommend using a much more intense highlight when you're doing pictures because again, you really want your makeup to show up. So if you do something too subtle, it's really just not going to show up on camera. For my blush today, I'm using the Essence Satin Touch blush in the color Satin Love. Again, with blush, you want to go a little heavy-handed. So you kind of really want your cheeks to look really nice and rosy. I promise you it'll look just right on camera. For my eyebrows today, I'm using the Ardell Brow Pomade. This one's in the color Blonde. I find that this pomade is a little bit darker than the pencil that I typically use, and I just find that I have a little bit more precision and control with a pomade than with my typical pencils. Now guys, I don't claim to be a genius at doing my eyebrows. I mean, look at that look on my face. You can tell that I'm a little bit out of my league. I just am not like great at doing my brows, but I do think when it comes to your brows, again, you want to make sure that you go like a tiny bit darker than what you typically go for, because oftentimes your brows, like a lot of the rest of your makeup, can get a little bit washed out on camera. And then I'm going to set those in place with my brow gel. This is from the Brow Gal. This is their eyebrow gel in the color Light. Now we're moving on to eyes. Today I'm using the Huda Beauty Warm Brown Obsessions palette because I wanted just kind of like a very warm sort of smoky eye. I'm going to start off with the coral color in the transition area. I'm using a Morphe M504 brush, and I'm just really kind of lightly building that up into the transition and crease area. When it comes to eyes and makeup for film or for camera, I always recommend like going kind of intense, but keeping the intensity, especially if you have smaller eyes, to the outer corners of your eye. You really want to keep the inner like half of your lid space and inner corner very bright. You don't want to add a lot of darkness or a lot of deep or medium deep color to the inner part of your eye, because it's really going to kind of close off your eye and just make your eyes look relatively small. Next, I'm moving on to this kind of red shade in the palette. I'm just kind of intensifying that color into the outer corner. I really just like to work in layers with this one. This is a very pigmented eyeshadow, but I find that I really love the formula of these eyeshadows. They're relatively new to me. I've only had these for about a month, but I've really been enjoying them lately. And I love just the warm red color. Now this looks a little bit intimidating for me, which I'm very much a neutral eye kind of girl, so I don't typically wear reds on my eyes, but I find that this color, once I build like darker browns on top of it, just really gives a pretty like peak of color that kind of pops out from underneath. So don't be intimidated by putting colors on your eyes, especially if you're going to add something a little darker afterwards. Now I'm taking this kind of orangey sort of color, and I'm going to kind of build that up on the lower lash line. Again, with pictures, I like to add just a little bit more on my lower lash line. This color's not too dark, so I'm not too worried about it like closing off my eyes too much. But again, if you want it to show up in the pictures, then you want to add a little bit more intensity than what you typically would add. Now I'm taking kind of that medium brown in the palette, and I'm just kind of applying that a little bit more closely to that lower lash line, just to add a little bit of like intensity to my actual lash line. And the brush I'm using for this is actually one that I got at a craft store, but you could really use any type of either pencil brush or smudge brush for this. Then I'm going to take the center palette in that, or the center color in that Huda palette. This is just kind of like a coppery bronze color. I'm just putting that on the center to outer part of the lid. I really want to concentrate it on kind of more of that outer part of the lid, because we're going to go in with something a little bit more brightening for the inner corner. And for that, I'm going to be using this sort of champagne color in my Nubian 2 palette. And this one I'm just putting on with my finger. I'm just popping that kind of in the inner corner and then dragging it over towards the center of the lid to kind of overlap that other color that we put on. That kind of creates a nice gradient. Then I'm taking the ColourPop highlighter in the color Flexitarian. I'm just adding a little bit more of that on the inner corner just to really brighten that inner corner up. I'm also going to take that with my finger and pop it onto just the very like topmost part of my upper cheekbone, because again, if you want your highlight to show up and to really be effective, you need to add a little bit more. Now I'm taking that dark brown in the Huda palette, and I'm just going to start adding some intensity to mostly my upper lash line. And for this, I'm using my MAC 217 brush. It's one of my favorite brushes for working in the outer corner of the eye because it does such a good job of placing color and also blending color. And I'm really just kind of gradually building up intensity there. Again, I want to keep my eyes relatively bright, but I also want a lot of definition. So it's really all about color placement here. You really want to just, especially if you have small eyes, keep that intensity right at the outer corner and don't pull it in too far. You can see that this adds just a lot of kind of depth to that outer corner of your eye without closing off your eye too much. Now I'm taking again that champagne color and I'm just going to use that to highlight my brow bone. And then it's time for eyeliner. Now I did not want to show you guys that on camera because it was kind of a disaster. Then just a lash curl, mascara, and that is it. Alright guys, so that is it for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed this one. Hopefully it was helpful for you guys, and maybe the next time you're getting ready to get your picture taken, maybe some of these tips will come in handy. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up, and of course if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I hope that you'll hit that subscribe button before you leave. Thank you guys again for stopping by today, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!